Hey Derivative Dill.
I'm Anti-Derivative Jill, and joining me on this epic journey is Tygerstripes.
Hello.
Yes, hello.
Hey.
Hello and welcome to A Year's Journey Through Middle-earth, Book 1, At the Sign of the Prancing Pony. We've made it to Bree. We've gone through the Barrow Downs and we're at Bree. Bree is the main village of Breeland, and so there are also surrounding villages. There's Bree, Straddle, Combe, and Arket.
Ooh, I think I have a map. Let's see if I can find
Oh,
it.
a map would be great. It's a great nestled community filled with big folk and little folk, as was described in the last chapter, men and hobbits, and they get travelers of all sorts coming in. It is weird that Scotty isn't still here, because it kind of feels to me like the Deep Space Nine of Middle Earth, kind of where travelers come to converge and visit.
And there's the outlying cities, Combe, Staddle, Chetwood. It's quite a large city by Hobbit standards.
It is. It's a large city, and I love the peacefulness of it, where these different species, the different races.
There's a lot of diversity, to put it in modern terms.
There is, and it's
Yes.
really lovely, because it does seem like they don't get along a lot of the time outside of Bree, but at Bree, there seems to be some kind of magic that they do. It says in the text, it says, "Nowhere else in the world was this peculiar but excellent arrangement to be found." Where the big folk were friendly with the little folk. It's very odd for them to share land like this. I like that they do here, which shows that they could if they wanted to in other places. The men of Bree say that they're the oldest settlement of men in Middle-earth. There were probably more outsiders scattered about in the west of the world in those days than the people of the Shire imagined. Some, doubtless, were no better than tramps, ready to dig a hole in any bank and stay only as long as it suited them. But in the Breeland, at any rate, the hobbits were decent and prosperous, and no more rustic than most of their distant relatives inside. And there had been a time when there was much coming and going between the Shire and Bree. Like Shire hobbits, they like having guests, but they're very plainly not ready to take a large number of strangers into their little land.
And although there's a lot of acceptance in Bree, there's that passage in the story, "But in the wild lands beyond Bree there were mysterious wanderers. The Bree folk called them rangers and knew nothing of their origin. When they appeared, they brought news from afar and told strange forgotten tales which were eagerly listened to, but the Bree folk did not make friends of them."
Yes, yeah, they're friendly among themselves, but outsiders, they're very protective of their land. And the hobbits of Bree also say that they're the oldest settlement of hobbits in Middle-earth, so they all think they're the oldest settlers here in Bree.
And the hobbits in the Shire have that saying, "Strange is news from Bree." So it really is on the borders of hobbitdom.
Right, and this is also where we first hear of Bree folk who are called rangers, and who have very strange tales and different mannerisms, and they come through Breeland. And the hobbits reach the gate of the village of Bree. Man at the gate wants to know why they're here. They're trying to, and Merry gets very clever. He says, "We are hobbits from Buckland, and we have a fancy to travel and to stay at the inn here." The gatekeeper lets them in.
And Frodo kind of pushes back at the gatekeeper, old Harry, at the gate, because he says, "What may your names be, might I ask? Our names and our business are our own, and this does not seem a good place to discuss them," said Frodo, not liking the look of the man or the tone of his voice. To which the man replies, "Your business is your own, no doubt, but it's my business to ask questions after nightfall."
Yes, because he has been seeing some weird stuff going around, and because,
yes,
well, as we're going to find out later, the Black Riders have been seen. So we get up to the inn, and Sam doesn't like the look of it. He was finding his first sight of the men in their tall houses quite enough, and so he's starting to. He's not happy with that.
Oh yes, his imagination's running away with him. It says, Immediately after, he pictured black horses standing all saddled in the shadows of the inn yard, and black riders peering out of dark upper windows.
Yes, he's always sensing danger for his friend. We surely aren't going to stay the night here, are we, sir? If there are Hobbit folk in these parts, why don't we look for some that would be willing to take us in? And so Frodo's answer is that Tom Bombadil recommended it. I expect it's homelike enough inside. And so they see over the door, it says The Prancing Pony by Barliman Butterbur. It has the fat white pony hanging over. There's a sign of the Prancing Pony. Barliman Butterbur. That name, man. The innkeeper welcomes them to the Prancing Pony.
I've got a great visual for him.
They can hear some merry singing inside, and so that makes them feel a lot better about going in. They nearly bumped into a short fat man with a bald head and a red face.
I love that because it's a Hobbit's eye view of Butterbur.
Even though he's short, for a Hobbit, he's tall.
Yes.
He says, "Good evening, little master." Bending down, he said. And so Frodo wants beds for 4 and stabling for 5 ponies. And he asks everybody's name. Of course, Frodo says he's Underhill. And that reminds Butterbur of something, but he can't quite remember what. Nob is a Hobbit who works at the inn, who shows Frodo, Sam, and Merry where their rooms are.
And Butterbur's, he's snapping his fingers, he's tapping his forehead, he's really trying to think of something that he can't remember.
Yeah, because he's so busy. He's such a busy guy that he's pulled in all directions. They've got special Hobbit hole kind of looking rooms just for the Hobbits.
It's in the North Wing. And again, I have a map that somebody has done. I can see all kinds of things that I feel like I would change, but it's really beautifully drawn.
Yeah, the Hobbit room. See, they put the Hobbit rooms there. I like that.
So that must be the north side.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. There's the east road that they came in on.
So Butterbur says that they can go into the common room after they've eaten. So where is that here? So, but before that, he also feeds them. It's good plain food, as good as the Shire could show, and homelike enough to dispel the last of Sam's misgivings. Already much relieved by the excellence of the beer.
So that must be pretty good beer, because I think Sam's standard is pretty high.
Right. Then, of course, they're invited to hang out.
When they're in the parlor, before they go there, there's a lot of wonderful list of food on the table that Tolkien does, and I love every one of them. There was hot soup, cold meats, a blackberry tart, new loaves, slabs of butter, and half a ripe cheese. Just nom.
Merry chooses not to go, so he's going to sit quietly by the fire and maybe go for a walk. And I like the friendship between Merry and Pippin. Pippin says, "All right," said Pippin, "mind yourself. Don't get lost, and don't forget that it is safer indoors."
Yes, he's tweaking him like a good friend does. And there's Merry taking that leadership role again.
He's getting the lay of the land. That's his real reason, probably, for staying behind and walking around. They're all greeted with a welcome from the Bree folk. It's filled with people, men of Bree, a collection of local hobbits, sitting, chattering together, a few more dwarves. We haven't seen dwarves in a while, so they're there. Humans have odd names, like Rushlight, Goatleaf, Heathertoes, Appledore, Thistlewall, and Fernie, and not to mention Butterbur. So they're botanical names. And there were also some Underhills there who decided that Frodo must be one of their long-lost relatives.
Yes, because they could not imagine sharing a name without being related.
Then Frodo everybody's so curious about him that Frodo has to make up a story for why he's traveling to the Shire. And he says he's interested in history and geography. He said he was thinking of writing a book, and that he and his friends wanted to collect information about hobbits living outside the Shire, especially in the Eastern lands. Because, of course, he can't say, "I'm here to save Middle-earth." But if Frodo had really wanted to write a book, the text continues, and had many ears, he would have learned enough for several chapters in a few minutes. So everyone just starts talking to him all at once.
It says, but after a time, as Frodo did not show any sign of writing a book on the spot, the hobbits returned to their questions about doings in the Shire. Frodo did not prove very communicative, and he soon found himself sitting alone in a corner, listening and looking around.
Which I guess is a kind of a intelligent thing to do, is try not to say more than necessary. Despite how curious they are, he's just trying to get through these conversations without making a fool of himself. So men and the dwarves are gossiping about things and trouble that they're hearing about.
And the men who had come up the Greenway were looking for lands where they could find some peace. The Bree folk were sympathetic, but plainly not very ready to take a large number of strangers into their little land.
They're looking for a place to resettle because of the troubles. There are refugees coming to Bree. And Pippin's very good at telling funny stories. But unfortunately, he's encouraged by the first funny story he tells. So he starts telling about Bilbo's funny story. And at that same time, Frodo notices a strange-looking, weather-beaten man. So he notices Strider. We're calling him Strider right now. We know who he is.
And he really is described to a T by Tolkien in this.
And Butterbur says he seldom talks, not but what he can tell a rare tale when he has the mind. He disappears for a month or a year, and then he pops up again. What his right name is, I've never heard, but I know he's known around here as Strider. Strider is now looking at him, as if he heard or guessed all that had been said. Presently, with a wave of his hand and a nod, he invited Frodo to come over and sit by him. And he advises him, maybe you should stop your friend from talking too much.
And I have a note here that originally, in early times in Tolkien's writing, Strider was called Trotter, and he was a hobbit. It's just fascinating to me how that changed and grew. Sometimes stories tell themselves as you write them. You realize things fall into place. You realize, no, this person is a very specific individual and really important to the story, and not a hobbit.
He's introduced as one of these rangers.
Yes, I've noticed that Butterbur says of Strider, what his right name is, I've never heard. And that struck me as odd because Aragorn introduces himself all through the books as Aragorn, son of Arathorn, fairly openly to anybody he meets. And I'm thinking that he maybe kept his identity specifically private from innkeepers and the like, because an inn is such a nexus. And if you let something go there, it's just broadcast as information. You know, the rumor mill starts and everybody talks about it.
In any case, his advice at the moment is to stop Pippin from saying too much.
Yes.
So Frodo stands up on the table and announces he wants to encourage ties between the Shire and Bree. And then he starts to sing. Because, well, and his voice is very beautiful, so everyone is much taken by him. And so they push more drinks upon him.
But I kind of love it, too, because while Pippin's, broadcasting, really getting louder and louder, Strider leans over and whispers in Frodo's ear, you had better do something quick.
And so Frodo decides to make even more of a scene.
Yes.
Some of the hobbits looked at Frodo and laughed and clapped, thinking that Mr. Underhill had taken as much ale as was good for him. Frodo suddenly felt very foolish and found himself, as was his habit when making speech, fingering the things in his pocket. He felt the ring on its chain, and quite unaccountably the desire came over him to slip it on and vanish out of the silly situation. He ends up singing the song, There is an inn, a merry old inn, beneath an old grey hill. Okay, so he's talking about the inn. I just want to get to the part that everybody knows because this is very similar to a real life
nursery rhyme.
It starts off at the inn with a man in the moon who comes to the inn to drink. And there's a cat playing the fiddle, so you know where this is headed. And there's a little dog who's mighty fond of jokes, so the little dog laughs.
Laughs until he chokes. And a horned cow, as proud as any queen.
This is what we'll read.
Who dances.
We'll start here.
Was it one that Bilbo wrote? It says, it's a ridiculous song that Bilbo had been rather fond of, and indeed rather proud of, for he had made up the words himself.
Yes, so in Lord of the Rings, Bilbo created Hey Diddle Diddle, the cat and the fiddle. The cow jumped over the moon. The little dog laughed to see
such fun.
And the dish ran away with the spoon. But that is, it's told a little differently here.
Oh, it's the whole story.
It's so much. Just Frodo thinking he can sing a silly song and everything will be fine. There's the cow, and then the rows of silver dishes, and the store of silver spoons. For Sunday, there's a special pair, and these they polish up with care on Saturday afternoons. Okay, let's take turns from here. You can start with The Man in the Moon.
The man in the moon was drinking deep, and the cat began to wail. A dish and a spoon on the table danced, the cow in the garden madly pranced, and the little dog chased his tail.
The Man in the Moon took another mug, and then rolled beneath his chair, and there he dozed and dreamed of ale, till in the sky the stars were pale, and down was in the air.
Then the ostler said to his tipsy cat, "The white horses of the moon, they neigh and champ their silver bits, but their master's been and drowned his wits, and the sun'll be rising soon."
So the cat on his fiddle played Hey Diddle Diddle, a jig that would wake the dead. He squeaked and sawed and quickened the tune, while the landlord shook. The Man in the Moon. "It's after 3, he said.
They rolled the man slowly up the hill and bundled him into the moon, while his horses galloped up in rear, and the cow came capering like a deer, and a dish ran up with the spoon. Now quicker the fiddle went deedle-dum-diddle, the dog began to roar. The cow and the horses stood on their heads, the guests all bounded from their beds and danced upon the floor.
With a ping and a pong, the fiddle strings broke. The cow jumped over the moon, and the little dog laughed to see such fun. And the Saturday dish went off at a run with the silver Sunday spoon.
The round moon rolled behind the hill as the sun raised up her head. She hardly believed her fiery eyes, for though it was day, to her surprise, they all went back to bed.
And everyone really enjoyed the song. There's a long and loud applause. What a song. Yes, and it makes sense Bilbo's proud of this song.
And they want him to sing it all over again, so they can learn it.
Right. Let's have it again, Master. Come on now, once more. So, and then they keep feeding Frodo more drinks. He got the encore, and he performed the encore. And now he's acting a little bit silly. He's capering about on the table. And when he came a second time to the cow jumped over the moon, he leaped in the air, much too vigorously, for he came down, bang, into a tray full of mugs, and slipped, and rolled off the table, crash, clatter, and bump. The audience all opened their mouths wide for laughter, and stopped short in gaping silence, for the singer disappeared. That's because
he simply vanished, as if he had gone slap through the floor without leaving a hole.
Yeah, and of course this is because he's accidentally slipped on the ring. Not
yes.
good.
Or the ring has slipped him on.
Something, yes. The ring does have a mind of its own.
Oh, yes.
And so now the people of Bree are not quite so receptive to the traveling hobbits. They don't want to. They're putting some distance between themselves and their traveling magician of
and there
unknown
are also
power.
Men in the crowd who've kind of been giving the hobbits hard looks the entire time that they've been there. And they leave. They slip out the door with Harry the gatekeeper.
And Strider says, "Why did you do that? Worse than anything your friends could have said. You have put your foot in it. Or should I say your finger?" Because he knows about the ring.
I don't know what you mean, said Frodo, annoyed and alarmed. Oh, yes, you do, answered Strider. And then he addresses Frodo by Baggins.
That's right. Because he heard Frodo talking about not calling him Baggins, but to call him Mr. Underhill outside of town.
Strider's been following them.
Yeah, if you're a hobbit and you meet a stranger who you realize has been stalking you, it's just a little bit creepy.
Even if it's Aragorn, son of Arathorn.
Yeah, they don't know that yet. He doesn't lead with his credentials. He doesn't try to build that rapport and say, "This is who I am and why you should believe me and why you should let me help you."
Yeah, he addressed that's addressed in the next chapter, but yeah, he's very close to himself. He's playing his cards close to his chest. Well, everybody rushes at Butterbur, wants to know where the hobbit went and makes a big fuss, and Butterbur's trying to smooth things over. "Well, where is he now?" cried several voices. "How should I know? He's welcome to go where he will, so long as he pays in the morning. There's Mr. Took now, he's not vanished." And then Frodo speaks up to kind of smooth things over, too. "Of course there's a mistake," said Frodo. "I haven't vanished. Here I am. I've just been having a few words with Strider in the corner." He came forward into the firelight, but most of the company backed away, even more perturbed than before. They were not in the least satisfied by his explanation that he had crawled away quickly under the tables after he had fallen. And everybody
No,
goes off in
because
a
they
huff.
saw him vanish themselves, so
Yes.
they can't be fooled by that. Strider asks Frodo for a word, and Frodo agrees, and that's basically the end of this chapter.
What's kind of funny, because it says, before long, no one was left but Strider, who sat on unnoticed by the wall. So it's, everybody really clears out after that.
Yeah.
I love Mr. Butterbur. Mr. Butterbur did not seem much put out. He reckoned very probably that his house would be full again on many future nights until the present mystery had been thoroughly discussed. Now, what have you been doing, Mr. Underhill? He asked. Frightening my customers and breaking up my crocks with your acrobatics? Very practical, very pragmatic.
Yes,
Mr.
I'm
Butterbur.
very sorry to have caused any trouble. A most unfortunate accident.
All right, Mr. Underhill, but if you're going to do any more tumbling or conjuring or whatever it was, you'd best warn folk beforehand and warn me. We're a bit suspicious round here of anything out of the way, uncanny, if you understand me, and we don't take to it all of a sudden.
This chapter is just kind of fun.
It is.
This one doesn't have anything to do.
I have a note on that it's a really nice breather from the tension and danger of the previous chapter. And the Prancing Ponies describe so well and so comfortably. It's fun. And you get to meet Strider, who's so important. And then this is a beautiful graphic, which is like a stained glass painting, but it's just got all of the elements in it of everything happening in the next couple of chapters in the Prancing Pony.
Oh, wow. This is like stained glass art.
It is beautiful, isn't it? I've spent a certain amount of time looking at it, and only just now did I see the 4 horsemen in the corners of it. It's very, very pretty, very fun, and it captures so many elements of the story that are happening.
Yes, and it also has the next chapter. So
yes, it does.
We're at the end of this chapter, so we're going to end this recording. That's all for now, and we're going to continue our quest. Stay tuned.
Namarie.
This is the end. I'm going now. I bid you all a very fond farewell.